Welcome everyone to our next installment of the Law Future Center's Scholarly Roundtable series. It looks like it's going to be brilliant. Interview or just for Dylan, by way of background, the Law Future Center has this Law Future Scholarly Roundtable series, where we invite some of the leading voices in the field. Invite 6 to 8 scholars a year to participate in this future scholarly gathering of the Law Future Center. A little bit about Dr. Lino, who's going to present a paper today on Our Rights Progressive, the strong debate over constitutional rights in the 1940s, 50s. The speaker today is from the University of Western Australia, and his research focuses on constitutional law and theory, indigenous people's rights, imperialism, and legal history. He's been at the UWA 2016. And he completed his PhD at the University of Melbourne and published the PhD as a book under the title Constitutional Recognition. Constitutional Recognition. So, please welcome Dr. Lino.
Thanks everyone for coming. I came here today from Lennox Head, which is just about an hour drive south of the Queensland border, which is where most of my family living. Drove up the coast, and I left quite early, hoping to make sure I got in time to get through the traffic and settle in and just have a coffee, relax, get across my notes and all that. I got just past Brunswick Head and got a flat tire. So if I seem a little bit more stilted in my delivery, we can all hopefully agree just to blame the flat tire. I also say that I swear I didn't leave the house this morning having some shirt stains on my pants. That was the flat tire as well. Stepdad and dad, and car fixing and things like that. So anyway, all good. So I wanted to start by acknowledging the Adarabu, Yagara, Sagara, and Turrbal peoples as the traditional owners of the land on which this campus is built. I want to acknowledge that they never ceded their virtues or their sovereignty, and to pay my respects to their families and their elders. I grew up on Bunjalung country, down around the Lennox Head, Byron Bay area, and I think this whole region is a very special part of the country. It's very special to me certainly, and I love getting the opportunity to get back over this way to the eastern states, as I now say, because I live in Perth and everything east of Western Australia is an eastern state, including South Australia. So I wanted to thank the Law Future Centre for hosting me here, and Saram for the invitation, and Mel for expertly coordinating all of the logistics. I realised that a talk focused on legal history is probably not the most obvious choice for an institution called the Law Futures Centre. I will say in my defence that I'm one of those bad historians who is mainly interested in history for kind of present purposes, I suppose, and so I can commit the mortal sin of presentism, at least according to I'm sure a lot of historians, but that's okay with me. And I guess my interest in legal history I would see as not purely antiquarian, but I think it can tell us as much about the present as it can tell us about the past. And so the history that I'm going to be talking about today, I think challenges some of our contemporary understandings about the politics of rights in Australia, and I think maybe also challenges the political priorities that rights hold within, I guess, broadly progressive agendas for legal reform in this country. So we know that today constitutional protection of rights is essentially a kind of a progressive political project, and I would argue that instituting greater constitutional protections of human rights, especially through something like a National Bill of Rights or a State Bill of Rights, is one of the highest aspirations of progressive Australians for law reform. Now, we associate this project with progressive lawyers like Gillian Triggs, Michael Kirby, George Williams, organisations like SetUp, human rights institutions, political parties like the ALP and the Greens, and I guess on the flip side, we associate opposition to constitutional rights and bills of rights with the conservative side of politics, and you've seen this recently in Queensland here with the LNP's opposition to the Labor's Human Rights Act. When you actually dig into the history of constitutional rights and the debate over them in Australia, I think you realise just how historically contingent our contemporary politics around rights are. And I think this is an issue that hasn't been properly explored so far in the debate over rights in Australia. What the history shows, I want to argue, is that advocacy for constitutional rights in Australia hasn't always been an exclusively progressive cause, nor has constitutional rights captured the highest aspirations for progressive law reform. And I'm going to try and demonstrate those points by turning to debate over constitutional rights in the 1940s, which is when they first came to political prominence in Australia. I had originally hoped to talk a bit about the 1960s as well, but I'm not going to be able to squeeze it in. So my argument is that when the Labor Party was in national government in the 1940s, many people seeing as Labor's sort of heyday during the war and the post-war era, it began to tentatively embrace constitutional rights protections, but largely for defensive reasons. In particular, it embraced rights to counter conservative attacks on the alleged risk of socialism and totalitarianism supposedly lurking in Labor's social democratic agenda for post-war reconstruction. For their part, conservatives in the 40s and 50s sometimes went beyond political attacks on Labor's program and turned themselves to constitutional rights protections as a means for tempering or thwarting that agenda. So, constitutional rights in this period were as much a conservative project as a progressive one, perhaps even more so a conservative one than a progressive one. But more than this, for the Labor Party in this era, the pinnacle of progressive law reform wasn't to impose limits on the political branches of government through judicially enforceable rights protections. On the contrary, Labor's central constitutional goal was one that had been committed to since the earliest years of federation, namely the expansion of government power, especially at the national level, in order to manage and regulate the national economy in the name of civilising capitalism. Put differently, Labor's animating constitutional struggle for much of its existence was to overcome the barriers that federalism put in the way of nationwide social democratic and redistributive policies. In the 40s, this involved efforts to expand federal power as the means for implementing centralised economic planning, an expanded welfare state, and selective nationalisation of industry. Constitutional rights were seen at best as a sideshow to this grander project, and at worst as an impediment to it. Now, I think that beyond the kind of intrinsic historical interest that we might find in this story, the history is worth knowing for how it, as I said, challenges some of the dominant contemporary ways we think about the politics of rights in Australia. For one thing, I think it offers an always important reminder, one that I think we sometimes tend to overlook today, that wider and stronger protection of rights against government interference isn't necessarily a progressive measure. Among the questions we always need to ask are which rights are being protected and who benefits from that protection. But secondly, I think knowing this history destabilises the privileged position that we afford to constitutional rights and legal agendas for achieving social justice by showing, I guess, an alternative, a past when rights weren't so politically prominent and another vision was. In the 40s and 50s, the grandest ambition of progressive Australians for law reform wasn't to entrench new rights protections against government incursions, but to empower the national government to implement a social democratic program of central planning, public ownership and expanded social services. Now, I need to be clear that recalling this history isn't about nostalgically romanticising, the ALP's past vision for social and economic reform. That vision was profoundly flawed in many ways, most notably in its deep entanglement with settler colonialism, white supremacy, sexism, other forms of domination, and lesser things as well, of course. I see the point of telling this history really not so much as we need to return necessarily to the past, but to help us realise the limits of rights as a vision of social justice, especially when it comes to addressing material inequality. And I think this history can also help us to imagine the sorts of alternative legal arrangements we might need for a more complete vision of social justice. So I'm going to start by talking about how traditional constitutional politics in Australia divided not on the issue of rights, but rather on the scope of the federal government's powers to manage and regulate the national economy. I'll then talk about how constitutional rights began to impinge on these traditional constitutional politics in the 1940s. And I'll do so both focusing on three different examples. The 1944 referendum, the 1946 referendum, and the Chifley government's doomed effort to nationalise the private bank in 1947. Alright, so first to Australia's traditional constitutional politics. From the drafting of the Australian Constitution in the 1890s throughout most of the 20th century's first half, constitutional rights barely garnered any notice in Australia. The original Constitution, which came into force in 1901, contained a few scattered rights provisions, in particular entitlements to just terms for the acquisition of property by the government, trial by jury, and freedom of religion. But to the extent that the Constitution's drafters, largely colonial conservatives and liberals, cared about the protection of individual rights, they generally put their faith in parliamentary sovereignty and the common law, which was seen to embody the rule of law. The framers were positively contemptuous of some rights, of course, especially protections from racial discrimination, and they drafted the Constitution with the express intention of enabling Parliament to pass racially discriminatory laws. The Australian left, whose most substantial and organised component has always been the labour movement, didn't diverge from the orthodoxy on the constitutional protection of individual rights, even though the labour movement didn't really participate in the framing of the Constitution itself. For much of the 20th century, very few in the labour movement saw the constitutional protection of individual rights as a necessary means for implementing an agenda of social justice. Typically, they saw influence over government and parliament rather than judicial supremacy as the ultimate means of protecting their interests. The left-right divide in Australian constitutional politics historically occurred not on the issue of individual rights, but on the issue of federalism. And I don't think that's necessarily obvious, and it's certainly something that I don't think we learn about today or we teach our students today We've kind of recalled the history of constitutional reform in Australia, and so Labor lost pretty much all of its efforts to amend the Constitution without actually thinking what they were about. And it's about over-federalism. So for the Australian Labor Party, which was, as you know, the politically dominant institutional representative, I guess, of the Australian left since Federation, federalism was the enemy. It presented often substantial constitutional barriers to Labor's favoured social and economic reform. Labor's problem was that whereas realising its program demanded the extensive use of state power, ideally at the national level, the federal constitution imposed significant limits on state power, especially at the national level. By 1919, the ALP platform included a plan for constitutional amendments that would give the federal parliament unfettered legislative power, that would replace the states with Commonwealth subordinated provinces, and would abolish the Senate. And this agenda remained in the ALP platform essentially until the 1970s, which was incidentally when constitutional rights became a kind of a Labor agenda as well. Labor's periods in government were typically marked by constitutional reform efforts to expand federal power to regulate various fields of the economy, such as corporations, employment and industrial relations, trade and commerce, monopolies, and prices and rents. By contrast, the conservative non-Labor parties, in their various iterations until the establishment of the Liberal Party in the mid-40s, were much more staunch defenders of federalism as a check on the power and the size of the national government. It was only in the 1940s, especially during the reign of the Chifley and Turpin Labor governments from 1941 to 1949, that constitutional protections for individual rights first began to gain some mainstream political traction. And as I said, I'll explore the growing salience of constitutional rights through these three different events or examples: the 1944 referendum, the 1946 referendum, and bank nationalisation. My argument is that to the extent that Labor embraced constitutional protection for rights, this was primarily a defensive effort to head off conservative opposition to Labor's social democratic program for post-war reconstruction. And Labor's lukewarm embrace of constitutional rights was always subordinate to the party's traditional constitutional agenda of expanding federal power as the necessary means for implementing their social and economic reforms. Conservatives, for their part, attacked aspects of Labor's social democratic program as threats to individual liberty, and in some instances turned to endorse constitutional rights as a means of attaining or thwarting that program. So let me turn to my first example, the 1944 referendum. Protections for constitutional rights made their way into the Curtin government's unsuccessful referendum to amend the Constitution in 1944. And this is reasonably well known. It's sometimes covered in the history of Bills of Rights in Australia, if only briefly. The primary purpose of the proposed constitutional amendment in the 44 referendum was to expand the federal parliament's powers over a list of 14 different areas, including employment, companies, monopolies, prices, production and distribution of goods, national work, and health, among others. And all of this was to support Labor's program for post-war reconstruction. The powers were to expire 5 years after the war ended, although Labor hoped that future constitutional revision would make them permanent. Alongside the 14 new powers, the proposed amendments also incorporated over the same 5-year period 2 rights provisions: protection against Commonwealth and state laws that infringe freedom of speech and expression, and an extension to the state of the Constitution's existing guarantee of religious freedom, which only applies to the federal government. Now, it's true In one sense, that these protections for freedom of speech and religious freedom had antecedents in Labor's earliest proposals for constitutional change in this period. Back in 1942, the Attorney General Bert Everett had developed an expansive constitutional reform program for post-war reconstruction that he canvassed in a constitutional convention with representatives from state governments as well as the federal opposition parties. Drawing from President Roosevelt's famous 1942 invocation of the Four Freedoms, Everett's proposal included measures for protecting freedom of speech and religion. But Labor's 1942 proposal was radically different from what was ultimately put to referendum in 1944, and that program emerged out of this constitutional convention after it kind of got, the compromises with the states and the opposition parties and so on. For one thing, the centrepiece of Labor's original proposal was not a list of 14 powers with a 5-year sunset clause. It was a standing power for the federal parliament to undertake, and I'm quoting here, all measures which, in the declared opinion of the parliament, will tend to achieve economic security and social justice. Now, along with the scope of this extremely broad power being effectively non-justiciable in the declared opinion of the parliament, the power was also expressly declared to be immune from other constitutional constraints. It could be wielded, I'm quoting, notwithstanding anything contained elsewhere in this constitution, including, we would presume, any constitutional rights protections. And this was to mirror what Labor saw as the desirable state of affairs that existed in the United Kingdom with the system of pure parliamentary sovereignty. But in any case, Everett's additional proposal on top of this idea for expanded federal power didn't actually involve, additional proposal for protecting free speech and religious freedom didn't actually involve the imposition of new restrictions on governmental power through judicially reviewable constitutional rights. Instead, Everett's proposal would actually have given the federal parliament more power to legislate for the protection of freedom of speech and religious freedom. So again, it's part of this agenda for expanding the federal parliament's power, albeit in the name of protecting rights. So that fell by the wayside, but when Labor returned to constitutional reform in 1944, the ultimate inclusion of rights protections in its referendum proposal came about not through some deep philosophical conversion to the cause of rights protection on Labor's part, but in response to conservative criticism of Labor's proposals for expanded federal power. The rights provisions were tacked onto the 14 powers proposal only at the last minute, and in an attempt to mollify the concerns, or at least to blunt the attack, of critics to Labor's rights. This conservative criticism came both from outside Parliament and within it. Outside Parliament, Labor's agenda for constitutional reform came under fire from Catholic quarters, including the influential Archbishop of Melbourne, Daniel Mannix, as well as several prominent Catholic newspapers, for failing to adequately secure religious freedom from the supposed threat of totalitarianism. The conservative-leaning Constitutional Association of New South Wales forcefully lobbied all MPs to incorporate a free speech guarantee in the referendum proposal. And those are a couple of examples outside Parliament. Within Parliament, although the opposition parties weren't united in their approach or attitude to the constitutional amendment, opposition leader Robert Menzies made a strident attack on the potential for some of the powers to be used in the service of, and I'll quote him, the socialisation of industry, the undue centralisation of administration, and the maintenance of such laws as unnecessarily interfere with the liberty of citizens to choose their own means of living and to exercise their rights as free people. Other opposition members launched similar critiques. Percy Sender, the former Treasurer under Menzies' United Australia government, and later the External Affairs Minister that succeeded Everett under Menzies' Liberal government. He was more supportive of expanding federal power than most opposition MPs, but he strongly pressed for the inclusion of a free speech guarantee as the price of his support. It was only after all of this criticism that Attorney General Everett moved to incorporate into the referendum proposal constitutional protections for free speech and religious freedom. But for Labor, the main game was always to expand the federal government's power in the name of implementing its post-war reconstruction program. If Labor had gotten its way along the lines originally proposed in 1942, it would have effectively established a regime of pure parliamentary sovereignty with no constitutional restrictions on the Parliament's pursuit of economic security and social justice, as the proposed provision put it. As it turned out, Labor was unable to get even its modified proposal with these rights protections approved at referendum. The opposition mounted a successful scare campaign against the amendments on the grounds that they would enable Labor to pursue the socialisation of the economy, as we heard Menzies talk about, and the industrial conscription of workers during peacetime. As we now see, these lines of attack would prove influential as Labor crafted its next proposals for expanding federal power. And that came with the 1946 referendum. So again, with Labor's 1946 constitutional proposals, rights protections once more found their way into the proposed amendments. Now, although this time around the Chifley government's ambitions for enlarging federal power were more modest than in 1944, the proposals promised to significantly increase the Commonwealth's capacity to manage the economy, as well as its capacity to maintain a welfare state. There were three separate proposals for new federal law-making power. The first was over industrial employment. The second was over a wide array of social services, including various welfare allowances, unemployment, pharmaceutical, sickness and hospital benefits, as well as medical and dental services. And the third power was over the organised marketing, government marketing of primary products. In the end, only the new power over social services was approved at referendum, and it now sits in the somewhat inelegantly titled Section 5123A of the Constitution. The powers over industrial employment and organised marketing, while they were approved by national majorities, were only endorsed in 3 of 6 states, and thereby narrowly failed to satisfy the state majority requirement for constitutional amendment in Section 128. Now, even as expanding federal power continued to be the constitutional priority for Labor, embedded within 2 of its proposed new powers were restrictions that effectively protected employment rights. The proposed power over industrial employment included a constitutional guarantee that the power could not be used to impose industrial conscription. That's the language of the provision. That is, to force people to work for particular employers in particular industries. The power over social services likewise contained a proviso that in legislating with respect to medical and dental services, the federal parliament couldn't impose civil conscription, effectively a guarantee of the autonomy of the medical profession. The prohibition on civil conscription of medical professionals remains in the Constitution to this day, and these are can be seen as akin to sort of part of the right to work, free choice of employment. While the proposed constitutional prohibition on industrial conscription protected the rights of workers, Labor's traditional constituency, the provision actually had its origins in the Conservative campaign against the 1944 referendum. one of the most potent lines of attack from the Conservative opposition parties against the 1944 amendments had been that the proposed new legislative power over employment would enable the government to maintain industrial conscription after the war. That claim was made plausible by the fact that Labor had introduced industrial conscription at home during wartime, contrary to what it had promised, as well as military conscription in the South Pacific. And industrial conscription saw the government directing people to work for particular employees in aid of the war effort. To counter the conservative attack on the 1944 amendment proposals, Labor MPs had signed a pledge promising not to institute industrial conscription in peacetime, but obviously politicians' promises only count so much. So when in 1946 Labor again attempted to expand federal power over industrial relations, the failure of the 1944 referendum convinced the Chifley government to depart from Labor's default hostility to constitutional restrictions and incorporate a constitutional prohibition on industrial conscription from the outset. That way, Labor could neutralise one of the Conservative arguments that had done so much to defeat its constitutional reforms in 1944. And in fact, the Conservative opposition parties ended up supporting this proposal in the end. As for the constitutional prohibition on civil conscription of the medical profession, this provision was belatedly introduced by Labor to win Conservative support for the proposed new social services power. The ban on civil conscription hadn't actually formed part of the Chifley government's original proposal for constitutional change, and it was only incorporated at the insistence of the opposition parties. Opposition leader Robert Menzies insisted that the protection of workers from industrial conscription had to be matched with a similar protection for doctors and dentists. Drawing on the industrial conscription proviso, Menzies himself supplied the form of words that would ultimately be incorporated into the Constitution. The motivation behind the ban on civil conscription was to impose a constitutional impediment to a fully nationalised health service. Both Conservatives and the medical profession feared that under Labor's original proposal for a new social services power, Labor would use the new power to socialise medicine, including by establishing a salaried medical profession, as was the case, as happened in the United Kingdom. That fear wasn't entirely unjustified, since Labor did have post-war intentions to institute a national health service, and the party's platform proclaimed full nationalisation of medicine as a long-term aim. To prevent nationalised healthcare from ever eventuating, the opposition parties pressed for constitutional protection of doctors and dentists from civil conscription, and Labor acceded to this proposal as the price of Conservative support. As interpreted by the High Court, the provision would do more than prevent the complete socialisation of medicine. In the first case to consider the civil conscription provision in 1949, the High Court gutted the Chifley government's pharmaceutical benefits scheme on the basis that the scheme had unconstitutionally conscripted doctors simply by mandating that they use government-supplied prescription forms. In this and other ways, this new constitutional right would present an obstacle to the establishment of a fully fledged national welfare state in Australia. Alright, so let me turn now to my final example, bank nationalisation, the most dramatic constitutional conflict of the era. Here too, rights would form an important part of both the political debate over bank nationalisation and the constitutional challenge that the banks launched against it. In both political and legal arenas, arguments based on constitutional rights were marshalled in support of Conservative attacks on bank nationalisation. And rights-based arguments ultimately found success in a 1948 High Court decision that was confirmed on appeal in the Privy Council. I'm just conscious of the time. Do people want me to keep talking about bank nationalisation? Or, yes, I'm going to use okay.
I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, sure. Okay, sure. In terms of the background, the ALP had long sought to expand public control over banking and reduce what it saw as the instability, exploitation and inequality stemming from the power of the private bank. And bank nationalisation has actually long been an objective included in the ALP's platform. While the Curtin government's original 1945 banking reforms didn't go quite so far as nationalisation, they considerably strengthened the powers of the central bank and substantially curtailed the autonomy of the private bank, and also increased the power of the government vis-à-vis the central bank too. Labour only implemented its program of bank nationalisation after a key part of its original banking reform was successfully challenged in the High Court in 1947. As the Conservative opposition parties denounced bank nationalisation as a socialist scheme that was fundamentally at odds with individual liberty, some figures on the political right began to call for a Bill of Rights to thwart bank nationalisation and other Labour policies. In the wake of the nationalisation of the banks, some right-wing groups, rather fringe right-wing groups such as the League of Rights, demanded a Bill of Rights in a campaign that they called Defend the Constitution. As the League of Rights South Australian president said, a Bill of Rights would protect against, quote, the totalitarian threat from Canberra, represented by bank nationalisation and Labor's broader quest for expanded federal powers. Calls for a Bill of Rights were also made by some more mainstream conservative organisations. For instance, in 1949, with the federal government's Privy Council appeal in the bank nationalisation case pending, the Queensland branch of the Liberal Party passed motions calling for a national Bill of Rights, as well as repeal of the bank nationalisation legislation. And as an aside, I'm sure many of you know that it was the Nickel and Country Party government here in Queensland who first sought to introduce Australia's first Bill of Rights in 1958. In the end, though, Conservatives didn't need any new constitutional rights to defeat bank nationalisation. The High Court declared the scheme unconstitutional on the basis of existing constitutional rights provisions. Most significantly, the High Court adopted an individual rights interpretation of the guarantee of freedom of interstate trade and commerce contained in Section 92 of the Constitution. This interpretation relied on a line of authority that turned a constitutional bulwark against interstate protectionism into a guarantee of the economic liberty to individual traders, including corporations. In taking this rights-based approach to Section 92, the High Court made federal schemes for nationalisation, including, of course, of the banks, virtually impossible. In an appeal on the Section 92 issue, the Privy Council ended up endorsing the High Court's approach. The other constitutional section central to the bank nationalisation case was also a rights provision, the guarantee of just terms for government acquisitions of private property. Here the High Court gave little deference to the government in determining what would amount to just terms compensation, even though some compensation had been provided to the banks. And the High Court invalidated parts of the bank nationalisation scheme for failing to provide just terms to the banks. Conservatives celebrated the bank nationalisation decision as a vindication of individual rights and liberties. Opposition leader Menzies said that the judgment was, and I'm quoting, great news for every Australian who objected to tyranny, and that the public were fortunate that the High Court exists to defend their constitutional rights. Leading Country Party MP Larry Anthony for the Tweeds grandly pronounced that as Magna Carta stands as the bulwark of English liberty, so also stands the Commonwealth Constitution as the guardian of citizens' rights in the Commonwealth of Australia. several major anti-Labour newspapers penned editorials celebrating the decision along similar lines. So, for instance, in an editorial titled Invalid Dictatorship, the Argus, the Conservative Melbourne-based daily broadsheet, denounced Mr. Chipley's Labour socialism as indistinguishable from Stalin's communism, but gloried in the fact that, quoting here, our fathers thought things out well when they drew up the Constitution as the bulwark of our liberties. In the struggle over bank nationalisation, what we might call possibly the most progressive effort ever by a Labour government to institute public control over the economy was defeated. And it was defeated on the basis of constitutional rights, whose triumph over Labour's social democratic agenda was widely lauded by Conservatives. I'll finish there. Thanks.